All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I believe this is episode number 79, and this is the first time I'm saying this, but I'm joined by both of my co-hosts this time, and Jack Eden and Trevor Kaufman. And yeah, I just wanted to start this off by saying what an end to March Madness. Just yesterday, we're filming this on Tuesday, April 5th. What a title game we had between Kansas and North Carolina. Honestly, I'll let Trevor or Jack start it off, either one of you, but like, what a game. I mean, I thought Kansas was down and out of it. I thought Kansas was going to win going into the game, but I thought they were out of it. I turned it off at halftime. I turned it back on in the second half. I was like, wow, like what a game we have here. What a comeback. Anyway, one of you go ahead. Who wants to go first, Eden or Trevor?
I'll start.
Yeah, he didn't have a pony in this race, so I'll let him take it.
Yeah,
I thought it was a great weekend of basketball. I think 2 out of the 3 games were fantastic games, and neither of those games happened to be played by my Villanova Wildcats, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, just looking at both of them, I want to look at both the Duke North Carolina game as well as the national championship with North Carolina and Kansas. But how to start first with the Duke North Carolina game, I think it was a classic Duke North Carolina basketball game. It's a game that's back and forth. It's close throughout. You get shot makers on both sides. It's not necessarily the low scoring, ugly game that I'm accustomed to from the Big East, but it's the more talented game. It's my guy can answer what your guy does. And I mean, watching that game just go back and forth, the shots being made by the guards on both sides, Manic and Banchero stepping up. It was a tough way to see Coach K go out, but ultimately North Carolina playing with 5-6 guys was the better team. And obviously that showed in the result. And then looking at next to the national championship game as well, I think it was really a tale of two halves. Carolina was successful in the first half because they were able to slow the game down and penetrate the paint. And so by slowing the game down, they took Kansas out of their rhythm. And there was, a 16-0 run. I believe it was tied at 22s. And then Carolina pushed it to 38-22 before Kansas could even score again. And then in the second half, Kansas just came out and did the exact opposite of what they did in the first half. They got back to their strengths. They pushed the ball in transition, and they got the ball inside. And that was really when you saw the game turn around. They were able to apply that physical pressure that you saw in the Final Four game against Villanova. They were able to force turnovers, and due to that, they were able to get easy buckets in transition. And from there, they just completely controlled the second half. So they were 2 fantastic games. I want to pass this over to Trevor now and get his initial thoughts, but it was a great weekend of basketball outside of the showing that my Villanova Wildcats put up. But I'm a proud fan. They had a great season. They were undermanned down the stretch. Just couldn't get it done. But congrats to my Wildcats on a Final Four.
Shout out Eden. Shout out Eden's Wildcats. Great season. The wrong Wildcats made the Final Four out of that region, but that's okay.
Wow.
The score will be set.
Better Wildcats, you're right.
Maybe the better Wildcats. You're probably right. Eden covered the game as well. I have a couple things I want to add. Number one, in the North Carolina Duke game, it just felt like North Carolina made the big shots down the stretch. That was the difference. Manic hits a big 3. Caleb Love hit a big dagger 3 really late in that game. And in the championship game, Eden pretty much covered it perfectly. It seemed like Carolina pushed around Kansas's big men, particularly McCormick, a lot in the first half. It didn't feel like they were able to get him settled in the game. Baycott, Manic did a great job rebounding on both sides of the floor. And then in the second half, it felt like David McCormick started to go at Armando Baycott, started to go at Brady Manic. And turns out David McCormick made the last 2 shots of the game. He was the difference. It was 69-68, and he hits 2 little jump hooks that give Kansas the victory. So I felt like he was a huge X factor, as well as Remy Martin. Shout out Remy Martin. I believe he's a 6th-year player, played for ASU for many years, and he was huge in that second half, hit 3 threes in the second half, big shot after big shot. And he kind of stymied North Carolina because it always felt like his shots were coming at a time when Kansas needed someone to score. It wasn't a Kansas run. It was when Kansas kind of needed someone to bail them out or hit a big shot. So shout out Remy Martin. He had a really solid championship game. And I want to talk about March Madness in general and why we love it. And I'm going to steal this from my man, Colin Cowherd. You know, I like to reference him, but I think he's spot on about this. And he said it. He goes, college basketball, you know, sometimes it's not the most talented basketball we've ever seen. It's not the best officiated basketball we've ever seen. It's not the most fluid basketball we've ever seen. But there's never a lack of passion, a lack of caring. No guys are sitting out because they need rest. You heard Armando Bacot after the Duke game, or maybe it was before the Duke game. He goes, "You're going to have to cut my leg off if I don't, you know, for me to not play in this game on Monday night." And that's the kind of passion that we kind of all love to see in March Madness and in the NCAA tournament in particular. And that's what that game was on Monday night. That game was passion. That game was two teams who missed a lot of shots, who struggled at times, but just would, you know, it felt like neither team deserved to lose. They were absolutely crying and fighting all the way to the end. And that's what we love about March Madness, and that's what we love about college basketball. So I thought that was a great take, and I thought that was a great description of the game on Monday. And, you know, I didn't want to see a team lose. I felt really bad for North Carolina. I was elated for Kansas, especially Bill Self, who lost his father earlier in the year. So congratulations to him. And I'm sure that was a huge victory in his career. And for North Carolina and for Hubert Davis, what a first year. I think Hubert Davis is going to be able to attract some really big recruits now in the very near future and get some big transfers in the very near future. And North Carolina isn't going anywhere, and he'll probably be right back in the Final Four within the next couple of years. So great game. You saw the passion. Great take by my man, Colin Cowherd. Just thought I'd reiterate that on this podcast.
Well, Trevor never ceases to quote Colin Cowherd at least once a podcast, so I'm glad we got the Cowherd quote in. No, but seriously,
hey, tell me I'm wrong, though. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I mean, look,
tell me he's wrong.
Look, Colin Cowherd. Look, for all his hate on Baker Mayfield, in the past, I used to hate him a little bit, but he's one of the better. I think he's one of the best sports talk show radio hosts out there. Honestly, he gives pretty good analysis. Anyway, look. I agree with a lot of what you guys said about these games. You guys both covered a lot of this. I don't have too much to add. I think Trevor's point about rooting for both teams and not really wanting a team to lose is something I agree with. Like, I'm sitting there watching this UNC Duke game. I'm like, man, like, do I root for Duke? Probably. I like Duke a little more. Coach K, final year. But it's like UNC, they're an 8 seed. Like, the emotion they're playing with, you can just feel the heart on that team. It's like, I didn't want to choose a team to root against. So I totally agree with that. I totally feel that. And I bet a lot of people felt that way. Look, the difference in this game, the UNC Duke game, to me was two things. Armando Bacot was unbelievable. I mean, the guy had 21 rebounds. Look, I don't think he has a future in the NBA, but the guy's an absolute amazing rebounder at the college level. I mean, just he laid it all out there. Even after his ankle injury, I didn't think he was going to be able to come back and play. But he came back in, and he still made an impact even after he came back in that second half. And he did end up fouling out, but still, like, he, just like the fight, with him and the entire team was unreal. Caleb Love, clutch, and as Jack said, I think, or it was one of you said UNC made the clutch shots down the stretch. Maybe it was Trevor. The Caleb Love dagger was just that was a dagger, and that was the difference, right? Duke didn't make the big shots. They shot 22% from three. AJ Griffin, the guy who I said would be the difference maker for Duke in the tournament, didn't really turn out to be the difference maker for them. But in this game, he didn't show up, and they didn't win. So, a shooter like that shooting over, I mean, he shot almost 45% from three in the season, or I think over that actually. So for him to go over 4 and 1 for 7 from the field, like that, I mean, that's the difference right there. And it's easy to say that, but he's a top 7 draft pick in this year's draft probably. So for him to go 1 for 7, that just wasn't going to cut it. Banchero played well. I mean, the team fought till the end, but they just couldn't quite get it done. And I think the nail in the coffin was Mark Williams missing 2 free throws. That killed them, and they just couldn't overcome that. But a great game, and clutch shot by Caleb Love, and just a great game to watch. And then the title game, I was going to shout out Remy Martin as well, because I thought he was the difference for that team down the stretch for Kansas. I'm glad Trevor shouted him out, because, I mean, the guy made multiple big threes in the second half there when they were making the comeback, taking the lead. They needed a bucket to keep the momentum or regain the momentum, and he was there to make a couple of huge threes. So I was going to shout him out. Great game from him. I was just shocked that UNC got turned around the way they did, because they were down early. The momentum was all Kansas early. And you're like, okay, here Kansas is going to go on a roll. But then UNC, 16-0 run. It was like, okay, like I didn't see how Kansas could come back. Like, they had no half-court offense. They were driving to the basket and just getting absolutely smothered. Like they had nothing.
Missed a lot of shots close to the rim in the first
They
half.
did, but like I forget who it was. I believe, and he's actually a late first round draft prospect, Christian Braun. He got just destroyed on so many drives to the basket in the first half. I was like, what is this offense? I mean, it was just unbelievable. It reminded me of the Cleveland Cavaliers offense recently, but like it was just terrible. But anyway, Kansas turned it around, and I think a lot of it was because of Remy Martin. And then, as Trevor said, McCormack at the end of the game for Kansas. What poise to be able to like just not only by him but by the team to like trust him in the last 90 seconds of a game to take like a turnaround hook shot. I feel like you don't see that a lot in games nowadays. With a minute and a half left, you don't see the big man taking a hook shot 2 possessions in a row at the end of games, like in college or the pros. So like I thought that was like really interesting. And then you see UNC Caleb Love taking a deep contested 3 with 15 seconds on the clock. And it's like, well, I mean, you could have gotten a better shot than that. And it was just really interesting seeing the 2 different teams and the 2 shots they took down the stretch. But great games, both of those. Unfortunately, the Nova Kansas game wasn't as close, but what can you do? Great tournament, great games. I'm glad I was able to catch this game and not, turn it off for good when Kansas was down 15.5. But yeah, great game.
I'd like to jump in again on a couple of those points. First off, going back to Remy Martin.
Yeah.
Obviously, growing up in Arizona, I don't necessarily have an allegiance because I don't go to ASU or U of A. But ASU was closer to me, so I always loved watching Remy Martin, especially the 2 games that he killed Kansas at ASU.
Yep.
First at Allen Fieldhouse when they were the number 2 team in the country, and then second the year after at home when they were the number 1 team. Those were always fun to watch, and I've always loved watching him. He's just a guy who his pace of play, the way he can change pace, he's just scary, and he can make jump shots, and especially being probably the biggest transfer in the transfer portal this year. Like the struggle that he went through during the regular season, he was their 6th man come this tournament, and he hadn't really done much at Kansas this year until he showed up finally in this tournament. So great to see him play a big role, and I'm happy for his success. But also going back to the points on David McCormack, he had his career high against Villanova in that Final Four semifinal game. Mm-hmm. And then who's the guy that you turn to down the stretch when you have Remy Martin who's cooking, when you have Ochai Agbaji and Christian Brown who are playing well, especially come the second half? Mm-hmm. You're turning to David McCormack to make those 2 shots to help you win the game. And I thought that strategy was interesting, but it worked, especially with Bacot off the floor after that ankle roll, which is tough to watch. And I want to get into that a little bit too. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised that Agbaji was the most outstanding player. I would have given it to McCormack, who had the game of his life in the semifinal and then gave you the 2 shots that gave you the championship. So I just wanted to get your take on Agbaji over McCormack for the most outstanding player.
I agree. I think that's a very interesting choice. I actually wasn't even aware that Agbaji got player of the tournament. I'm not super familiar with their production in the first 4 games. But yeah, if we're basing it, I shouldn't say we're basing it off of, but if we're looking at the 2 biggest games of the tournament, who played the best for Kansas, the Final Four in the championship game, it was David McCormack, right? Like he was sensational against Villanova, and he basically won them the championship against North Carolina, right? He hit the 2 big shots that were the difference. So I agree, Agbaji is a suspect pick, but he has been kind of Kansas's glue all season long and their best player all season long. So I could see why he would get the award. And again, I don't know their stats from the first 4 games of the tournament. I'd have to go back to those first 4 games, but I agree based on these last 2 games, McCormack definitely made an excellent argument for that player of the year, or player of the tournament.
Is that what it was, by the way? It's player of the tournament?
Most outstanding player. I don't know if they do it by tournament or by just Final Four.
Yeah, I was going to say, because
they do the regional player, so I assumed if it was just the Final Four, it would have been McCormack, but I could be wrong.
I mean, look, Agbaji, I thought he was really good in a lot of the first few games that they played in the tournament. So, I mean, I get if he was given it there. But look, like, McCormack, I think, was probably deserving of it. I mean, the guy, he was fantastic in the final 2 games. I mean, at the end of the day, I get why they gave it to Agbaji, though, because the guy, he's a 4-year, he's a senior, right? He's a senior. He's played there his entire career. I mean, he's been a really good player for them for a long time. And this is his first title, right? So, I get it. right? The guy's been there for forever. It's not like, I guess, strictly about all like raw numbers or impact in the final couple of games, I suppose. It's more of like, look, you've been there for 4 years. You're the leader of the team, you know, at least on the court. I don't know about off the court, right? He's their best player. He has been for a while. Like, I get it in that sense. But yeah, I mean, like if you're going by numbers and impact in the final 2 games, yeah, McCormick deserves it more, I think.
And then the last piece I wanted to talk about. I don't know if you guys have seen the video of Baycott rolling his ankle down the stretch with 35 seconds left in the national championship game. But you can see it as they zoom in. Keep in mind, it's Carolina ball. It's late in the shot clock, but there's about 35 seconds left in the game. They're down by 1. And he's driving in on McCormick, and you can see as he plants, the floorboard kind of shifts a little bit.
Oh, really?
And so the speculation is whether like a loose floorboard is the reason why he rolls his ankle. And I don't know if he necessarily makes that shot, but you come down on the other end, and what do you do if you're Kansas? You go right into McCormick playing against Brady Manick, who is not nearly as big or strong as Armando Baycott. And you can see he's sitting fully on his left shoulder, trying his best to make McCormick go left and not right. And McCormick's just too strong at that point and hits the shot that puts them up 3. So I'm just curious. It's definitely speculation, but is that loose floorboard the reason that Carolina is not victorious right now?
Oh, look, that's a pretty big what if. I mean, at that point in the game, I think wasn't Kansas up 1, right? When Baycott
up 1 with about 35 seconds left.
I will say when Baycott drives and turns his ankle, he kind of like basically just like goes in the air and falls down, right? Like he doesn't even like he like completely just falls over and like wipes out, right? Like he wasn't even able to like kind of like sustain any kind of balance or anything. So I could definitely see a floorboard causing that. And that ankle had already been beaten up, I think, from the game before.
Yeah, it was the same ankle. You can see him grabbing it too up in his shin, and immediately that's a high ankle sprain.
Here's what I will say. Kansas actually didn't score until Baycott got back and they were able to sub him out of the game. You know,
I would say, it
was Wilson. It was Wilson who had a wide open 3, and he kind of just held on to the ball. And it was good sportsmanship, but in that situation, I agree with Bill Rafter. You got to score there, right? This is the national championship game. You got to score, take the advantage. So what ended up happening was Baycott was able to get back into the play, and then the refs were able to blow it dead once there wasn't like a clear advantage for Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think that floorboard causes North Carolina the game. I think what caused North Carolina the game was Carolina's just inability to make a big shot in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game, and Kansas's ability to make a big shot or 2 in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game, which was the difference.
I'm glad you said that, because look, like I want to highlight this again. Like Kansas had a huge blunder at the end of this game. Like you remember, they stepped out of bounds on their inbounds play.
Yes.
Like that's almost inexcusable. I mean, you had the game. You had the game there. You inbound the ball and the game's 99% chance it's done, right? But I mean, they stepped out of bounds, and it was a well drawn up play. Like he had it running up the sideline. He just stepped out of bounds. He just didn't gauge it right. And like, I think it all just falls on UNC. Like your play, I think they had a timeout after that, right? At least they had time because they were reviewing how much time to put on the clock.
Yeah, they had a timeout.
So like, out of a timeout, your play is to inbound it to Caleb Love for a deep contested 3 with a bunch of time left.
Oh, there was 4 seconds left at that point.
I also think maybe it was going to Manick in the opposite corner, and you could see him trip on that play. But the counter argument I want to make is, if Baycott doesn't get hurt there, I assume he gets back on defense. Is Kansas still going to McCormick on that play?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
versus Manick guarding him.
The play before, hadn't McCormick just scored on Baycott? Right? It had to have been on Baycott because he was in the game because they were down by, right?
Right. Yeah. I believe it was a switch on to Manick.
Was it? Okay, then if it was a switch,
Baycott was in the game.
Yeah, I know he was in the game, but I don't remember if it was on him or not.
I think what Kansas was thinking as soon as he went out is that's the mismatch we want to exploit.
Yeah.
So maybe they still hit a shot, but I don't necessarily think they're throwing it into McCormick on that play. I think if you're forcing a guard to make a jump shot and they miss, and you can see with the plus 20 rebound differential for Carolina with Baycott still on the floor, do they get one more chance down 1 with 10 seconds left in the game?
Maybe, quite possibly. But do you think when Kansas had the ball 5-on-4, Baycott literally couldn't walk, right? He was hopping down the floor. the reason because I thought it was inexcusable why they didn't try to exploit a 5v4.
I totally
I was
agree.
like, what are you doing? So
I
what
wouldn't
does it say? Is the thought was it like we want to wait because we want to like call time out and exploit the matchup because we know Bakeout's not going to be on the floor? Like that's my only rationale behind it. Like why else would you just stand there?
I
Like
don't
unless you
think
want to
so.
drop like a set
here's
play.
my rationale is there's about 20 seconds left in the game. Or at that point, there was a little bit more time. There was probably 40 seconds left in the game.
Yeah, it was like 30 something. Yeah.
So I think the rationale was I'm not going to take a rushed 3 early in the shot clock. I'm going to use game clock because Kansas was up 1 at that point. Now, it was the wrong decision, but I think the rationale was to kill clock and waste some time, right? But I agree. I think it was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
But look, these are college kids, and when it's a 1-point game, 40 seconds left in a national championship game, erring on the side of caution might not be the worst thing ever because on a 5-on-4, you're not guaranteed to score. You're pretty much guaranteed if you move the ball a little bit, you're going to get an open shot.
Yes.
Maybe a layup, but you're not guaranteed to score. So the rationale is maybe we just hold the ball and kill clock because we're winning. But maybe it was the wrong decision.
Yeah, I think Wilson made the right decision not to shoot the wide open 3. But I think Wilson made the wrong decision not to drive the ball and then try and get a layup inside. That's what I would have done with that. But I was just curious to see what you guys thought.
Now, if that's Remy Martin at that stage in the game, you maybe take the 3 because you've already hit like 4 in the half or 3 in the half. But for Wilson, who I don't think had hit a 3 all game, don't shoot it.
And there were some ugly misses in there too, I think. So
yeah.
No, I mean, sure. Yeah, it was just a very interesting ending, honestly. The more you look at it,
I think for North Carolina, and it's the tough truth is you probably should have won this game if you're North Carolina. You had the big lead. You dominated the glass. You shot the ball better. You didn't shoot the ball better, but you dominated the glass and you made more free throws and you kind of you kind of asserted the way that you want to play. But they got tight in the second half. I think simple as they got really tight in the second half. They missed a lot of shots and Kansas started executing at a high level in the second half and Remy Martin got hot. And at the end of the day, Kansas probably stole a game that they shouldn't have won, but that happens from time to time. But with that being said, fellas, I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts before we move on.
Good.
We're good. All right. So we're going to move on to the next part of this podcast. Good discussion there, though, fellas.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little NBA. I know each of us have a team we want to talk about. Ryan or Jack, I don't know if you guys want to get started, or should I get started? It's up to you guys.
Oh, Trevor, you can get started if you want.
I think Trevor should start.
Yeah. This is great, Trevor. Get started here. Yeah, go ahead.
Eden's the only one that dressed for the occasion. Eden's wearing black for the Cavaliers funeral as they lose to the Orlando Magic tonight. For 120 to 115, the Cavs dropped to 43 and 37 on the year. And look, I'm going to be objective with this, and I'll preface my funeral with this.
This is awesome.
It was a great season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was an overachieving season for the most part. They won a lot of games, but unfortunately, when you sustain a lot of injuries as a young team, it's hard to maintain that level of play. And it just feels like Cleveland more and more, and they're going to get 2 cracks at it. Cleveland is just a play-in exit. And it's sad because I actually thought they would have been a fun team to watch in the playoffs for a series, but I don't see Cleveland in the form that they're in right now. And they could get Allen back. They will get Mobley back. We'll see if that makes a difference. I just don't see them. I don't see them in a sudden death situation beating Atlanta and Brooklyn, probably. I don't see them beating either of those teams. I think Atlanta's playing really good right now. I wanted to talk about the Hawks, but Ryan wanted to talk about the Cavs.
Whoa.
Cavs. So, look, it was a good season. It was an overachieving season, but the Cavs have come back down to earth. And, look, they're a team that has a bright future ahead of them, but I wanted to officially have their funeral tonight on this podcast. Their season will be over in about a week from now. And I wish them luck in the offseason because they do have a lot of young talent on this team.
Jack, you want to go ahead or you want me to give my take here?
I'll go quickly. I don't have much to say on the Cavs. I think it's going to be a very interesting play-in with all 4 of those teams. I think the one guarantee that I would say, and I think I said this last week, is if the Nets are a 7 or an 8 seed, I think you can pretty much guarantee that they win one of those 2 games and find their way into the field of 8. But I think it's going to be really interesting, especially if the Nets are not a 7 or an 8. I think realistically, any of these teams could get out of those 4 if that's the case. And I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that plays down the stretch, especially with, the Cavs kind of falling off a little bit due to injuries, whereas, the Hawks are getting healthy. The Nets have Katie and Kyrie back full time, and Charlotte's just whatever they are right now. They're up and down. So, but
Yeah.
I'll let Ryan go.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said it last week, didn't I? What did I say? I said Brooklyn and Atlanta will be the 2 teams to come out of the play-in, and I think that still stands. Look, teams that have been here before, healthy teams, will come out of the play-in, right? Charlotte's inexperienced; they don't play defense. The Cavs don't play defense without Mobley and Allen because not that that's any excuse, but it makes a difference, right? And they just don't play defense right now without those 2 guys. Atlanta doesn't play much defense, but they're just hot right now. They're a great experienced team. They made a big run last year. Brooklyn has Kevin Durant and Kyrie. Kyrie wasn't shooting very well recently, but I think he got more on track tonight. I think he had 42 tonight, something like that, something to that effect. So Kyrie's Kyrie. He'll show up in some form. Yeah, those 2 teams are the favorite. Look, about the Cavs, there's literally just one thing to say. And look, well, there's 2 things to say. One, they're not playing well right now, and injuries aren't an excuse for losing to a team like the Magic. I mean, that's just not excusable. Trevor and I were actually talking off the air about this. We were actually talking about, good teams losing to really bad teams. And, we're like, look, if you're a team going in expecting to just kind of cruise to a win, you have to remember, this is the NBA. These players, especially on these bad teams, are still auditioning for a contract. They're auditioning for next season. They're going to play hard. And this is kind of what happened to Phoenix against OKC earlier in the week. They kind of just expected to go in and win, and maybe they should, right? And they don't have anything to play for, but, OKC's lineup is really, really, really bad, much like Orlando's. And to walk in expecting a win, you're not going to get that in the NBA, no matter how bad the opponent is. So, that's what the Cavs did tonight. That's what they've been doing too often. They've done it against Detroit, in the past, Houston in the last couple of weeks or months, and that's just unacceptable. So, look, like I can blame injuries, and injuries are a big factor. Mobley and Allen are massive losses. Obviously not having Rubio or Sexton for an extended period has been, brutal as well. But those 2 front court injuries in particular just killed this team on defense. I'm hoping they're healthy. That way I can at least see what we look like in the play-in pretty healthy, Allen and Mobley there. Because if we're not fully healthy, it leaves an asterisk to me, and it's like, what if? And I don't really want that. So I hope we're healthy going into the play-in. I hope I can see what this team is made of. I'd love a full playoff series. But either way, the season's a success. Trevor said it's Cleveland's funeral, but look, hey, one of the youngest teams in the NBA, doubled our win total from last year. I'm excited for what the future holds. So, and
look, funeral for this year. I'm not talking about.
Yeah, that's fair. If we don't get a playing spot, bright side is we get our 1st round pick back. So, hey, I'd take that, honestly. It wouldn't be all for nothing. So either way, the team will get some good playoff experience. I know the play-in's like in between. It's like kind of limbo, right?
Playoff like basketball.
Yeah, and so it'll be good experience either way. We'll probably get 2 games, assuming we don't win the first one, which, we'll see. But yeah, I'm not confident right now. Honestly, like I'm hoping Mobley and Allen come back and give us, shoring up that front court. But if they come back, I think we can get a series. If not, I just don't think we stand much of a chance. But either way, if I had to put money on it, Brooklyn and Atlanta come out of the 4 here.
I just want to say I like Ryan's use of the asterisks with injury concerns, because I can relate that to my Villanova Wildcats in this Final Four. And I would like to go with Ryan's point. If the Cavs don't make the playoffs, they have an asterisk there. They should have made it. So let's just also add that to the Villanova Wildcats. If Justin Moore and Jordan Lungey were healthy, they could have won the national.
Let me just say this. If he was healthy, don't you wish you could have seen what your team was like with him healthy against the Kansas team? Just like,
oh, totally.
Don't you wish
won? I don't know. I'm just making fun of you. But
I know.
Oh, look,
but
it's a good point, though. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Every team's hurt at this stage in the year. There's no team that is 100% healthy. Some teams are more injured than others.
A lot more.
But I just
at the same time.
My thing is we can't live in a world of what if. We can't live in a world.
No, you're right.
Well, if this guy was healthy and this guy, wasn't pregnant and this guy was this. You play the game with the guys that are on the court, and the Cavaliers are not doing that very well right now. And I get you're missing Mobley, and I get you're missing Allen, but Orlando's Orlando. You should be able to
I
win
agree.
that game.
That was my
eyes
point.
closed. I don't care who suits up for the Cavaliers. You should be able to beat a team like Orlando. And same thing with my Suns. I don't care if Oklahoma City finds, Michael Jordan and brings him back into his prime. You should be able to win that game. So I just think the reality is, look, it's great to talk about, if this guy was healthy and this guy was healthy. I just think we have to look at it like the guys who are on the court are the guys who are on the court. And for right now, I don't like Cleveland's guys on the court. That's simple as.
Look,
honestly, again, I just want to say, look at Anthony Davis's comments. They would have won the championship the last 2 years if they were healthy, but that's not the case. And I can't wait to talk about that.
Look, it's to me, it's just like, look, like it's obviously a pointless exercise, right? But like, if you're any team with a major player or two that are injured, like you're sitting there like, what if? And I'm just saying I don't want that,
Yeah.
Like however unreasonable it is, Lakers fans sit there and they're like, man, what if Anthony Davis didn't get hurt? Nuggets fans last year are like, man, what if Jamal Murray never tore his ACL? Like, you know what I mean? Like, Clippers.
Yes, I agree with you.
Clippers are like, man, what if Kawhi didn't tear his ACL in the playoffs, right? So I just don't want that what if. Like, that's my only point. Obviously losing to Orlando's NXT. As I said, I made the point about you should always show up and not expect to just cruise. But yeah, I just hope that we're pretty healthy going into the play-ins here.
To take from what Trevor's boy Colin Cowherd said about the playoffs last year was the healthiest team was going to win. You saw come the NBA Finals, I think the two healthiest teams in the NBA last year were the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks. And Giannis hyperextends his leg, misses one game, and then he comes back and they win the championship. So
nature.
It's a freak, but the reality is health is huge, especially come playoff time. That also kind of gets into his argument about shortening the NBA season as well. But health is a factor in sports. It's part of the game.
Agreed.
No team's ever going to go unhurt throughout the season. So it's just a part of sports. And more often than not, the team that's healthier wins.
Agreed.
Very good point. No, yeah, very true.
I love talking about the Cavaliers, especially when they lose. But I know, Ryan, you want to talk about a team.
I do.
A team that is good, but they're a year away from
despite injuries, they're good.
They're really good despite injuries. That's a fact. So, Ryan, go ahead. Take it away.
Man, yeah, okay. Another jab at my Cavaliers. It's fine. Look, the Memphis Grizzlies are a really good team. Look, Jack's definitely right with injuries, without Ja. And Ja's missed 22 games this year, and they've only lost 2 of those games.
Yeah.
They're 20-2 without Ja Morant. And, it's really interesting because, people – I know, Trevor, earlier in the year, do you remember when Ja got off to a super hot start, we were talking in the podcast, could Ja get MVP votes? And as the year's gone on, the answer is no. But a lot of the reason the answer is no is because look at the way this team's played without him. And that's not to say, and I think it was you, Trevor, we talked off the air about how, like, he's still having an impact on this team, in the locker room or, when he's not even playing, would they play this well if he wasn't even on the roster? Probably not. But like 20-2 without him playing is just unbelievable, right? Like you don't see the Hawks going 20-2 without Trey. You don't see the Cavs going 20-2 without Darius. You don't see maybe you see the Suns going 20-2 without Chris Paul.
Not quite, but close.
I think it was 11-4, but yeah, your point.
You don't see the Warriors going 22 without Steph. Like, so you look at any other team in the NBA and you don't see this level of success without their best player. So it's just like, man, like I just want to talk about this because what an unreal team they've put together. And they have, all their first rounders, I believe, for the foreseeable future, which is really, really good management by their general manager. Like, great job. They built through the draft really exclusively here. I mean, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, I think, right? Most of these guys are all out of the draft. So like really good for them. And Brandon Clark. Yeah. So good for them. Great job. And, I just want to shout out a few of their players. Desmond Bane in particular. I mean, what a jump this guy's made from last year. I mean, the guy's having 30 minutes a game. He's their best 3-point shooter. He's shooting 43% from 3 on 7 attempts a game. I mean, the guy's just been absolutely sensational. A massive jump. D'Anthony Melton's also made a really nice jump for them this year as well. Giving them a lot of good minutes off the bench, 11 points a game, 38% from 3. They just have really good role players. Jaren Jackson, really good on the defensive end, over 2 blocks a game. The guy's got a nice 3-point shot. It's not the most beautiful stroke out there, but it goes in more often than you would think. And they've just got a really, really good roster, a deep roster. Like I said, Brandon Clark, Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson's a solid player for them. Tyus Jones is a really solid backup point guard. People really underrate him. He's a really solid point guard, doesn't turn the ball over. And clearly has done the job when John Morant's not out there. So I just want to shout this team out because they've exceeded my expectations. I'm pretty much everyone's expectations, and they haven't slowed down at all, right? You look at a lot of these other teams, the Hornets, they've had flashes of really good, young play, but they're not consistent, right? You look at the Cavs, you look at the Timberwolves, a lot of teams, they're young, they've shown potential, but they haven't been consistently really good. The Grizzlies have been, and they're a really, really young team. So that's unique, I think, to see a team this young play this well, this quickly. So I just want to shout them out. I think that they could easily go all the way to the Western Conference Finals if they get the right matchups here. They definitely could. Depending on who they play in the first couple of rounds, I can see it. And especially, as Jack said, the healthiest team goes to the finals, right? If they stay healthy, look out. This team could go far. So I just want to shout them out, shout out some of the role players because they've been great this year. Oh, and Steven Adams, by the way, solid trading Valanciunas for him. They realized they didn't need a guy scoring for them inside. They just needed a guy gobbling up rebounds, getting their guards and forwards second chance opportunities. And that's what Steven Adams does. He's one of the best offensive rebounders in basketball, doesn't take a lot of shots, does a great job in that role for them. So, he's been really solid for them this year. So I just want to shout out some of their role guys. I think they've been great.
To build on that Steven Adams trade, that was a salary dump from the New Orleans Pelicans this year. They dumped Steven Adams, they dumped Eric Bledsoe, and I believe they unloaded one of the picks that they got from the Lakers in that Anthony Davis trade in order to do it. So adding on to your point about draft picks too, if that's potentially, I think it's top 10 protected. So if it ends up falling 11 through 14 and they pick that up this year versus 2 second-round picks, that'd be another huge addition for them. They've been a great team all year. They've been a great story, and I think in many aspects they're the team that came out of nowhere this year. John Morant taking a big step, their role players stepping up, making big plays, added some savvy vets to help round this team out and give them some championship experience, some playoff experience. And I think the comparison here is easy. They are the Phoenix Suns of this year. The team that came out of nowhere, the team that has set the league on fire. And to see what they're doing without John Morant is something that I would never have expected. Them to be 20-2 without most likely the most improved player in the league and a guy who, if he had stayed healthy, would have definitely been in the conversation for MVP this year. I think what they're doing is great. And I kind of go back and forth because I now see what everyone was saying about the Phoenix Suns last year is we're a year away. We're too young.
Right.
We don't have that experience yet. We're not there yet. And I say here and I look at Memphis and I'm like, those are all my excuses for them. But then at the same time, as a Suns fan last year, I was like, where was my respect? Me and Trevor both were like, where is our respect? Why don't people take us seriously?
The Lakers were picked over us. The Nuggets were picked over us. And then the Clippers didn't have Kawhi. But at that point, everyone knew we were the best team in the West anyway. So
yeah. But I mean, it's interesting to sit here a year later and be on the other side of that argument now with Memphis. And here's what I'm going to say about the Memphis Grizzlies is they will be the 2 seed. So they'll end up getting the winner of the 7-8 game. It's going to be really interesting. If it's the Clippers, it's going to be a tough test for them. If it's Minnesota, I'm not going to take them seriously. And I think I probably won't take them seriously until they get to the Western Conference Finals. And I think if they can get there, whoever they play in the first round, if they can face, most likely it'll be Golden State, even if it's Dallas, but less of an extent if it's Dallas. If they can face Golden State in a 7-game series and beat them, then I will take them seriously. And I don't think I can sit here confidently and say that I can until they show to me that they can do that.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, that would be when the Phoenix Suns would play them. So that's my time to be nervous is when we play them, not before. But but I can't sit here and say that I'm scared of them until they show me that they can beat a team like that in a 7-game series.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to echo everything Jack said. I'm going to build off this point a little bit, right? The Memphis Grizzlies are the Phoenix Suns of this year. And who's to say that the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't the Memphis Grizzlies of next year? Young talent, need to develop a little bit. So I like to give Ryan a lot of crap. But Ryan, that is what your Cavaliers can turn into. I want you to remain positive there. Yeah. Anyways, enough about Cleveland, the awful city. Anyways, Jack's totally right. I think Memphis is hard to it's hard to say what they're going to be in the postseason, right? Like if they get the Clippers first round, it feels a lot like the Lakers Suns first round series last year, where a lot of people were picking the experienced 7-seeded Lakers.
Who would you choose?
Look,
it's hard.
Injuries, man. Let's just say the Clippers have everybody except Kawhi and Memphis stays fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably take the Grizzlies in 6.
Really?
I think we'll fall in love with the Clippers pick, but I just don't think the Clippers have a lot of continuity and enough reps with each other. And there's also a lot of injuries that happen to that team and a lot of moving parts. So I would still take Memphis, but it would be a very competitive 6-game series. And I agree with Jack on this front as well. If I saw the Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference Finals as a Suns fan, I would feel very comfortable. I would be nervous just because it's the Western Conference Finals, but I would much rather see Memphis as opposed to a Golden State or even Dallas or even the Clippers, if I'm being honest, right? Like I know I just said the Grizzlies are favored to beat I would pick the Grizzlies to beat the Clippers, but I would feel better about playing the Grizzlies than I would about playing the Clippers. So I agree with Jack. If you can beat Golden State, and let's assume they have Steph back by the time that series happens, let's say that is the 2-3 series. If you can beat Golden State in a best of 7 in the playoffs with their full team, then yeah, you're legit. I mean, you're probably legit before that, but then you're a legit title contender. And if you can beat Golden State in a 7-game series in the playoffs, you can definitely beat my Suns in a 7-game series in the playoffs. So I agree. I think they're a great young story. I think they're going to win at least one playoff series this year. Clippers will be interesting, but I think they'll beat the Clippers. And I think that'll be a very entertaining. I think the Warriors would beat them in 7. I think that's what would end up happening. I think that series would go to a 7th game. And I think the more experienced Warriors would win a one-off, a sudden-death game 7. That's how I think Memphis' season is going to play out this year. But that's just me.
Look, we can move on from this in just a second. But, Trevor, you're better than me because, you're in the exact same spot I was last year. And I'm really glad Jack brought up the point he did because, look, if you're taking the Grizzlies over the Clippers, I mean, I respect you because I would not do the same thing. I didn't do the same thing last year when it was the Lakers and the Suns. And I won't do the same thing again this year. I would take the Clippers. I just would. I'll take experience 9 times out of 10 over, young talent. I just will. Like Paul George and the experience. Reggie Jackson hits big shots in the playoffs consistently. Right. And, Paul George has been there many, many times before. A lot of that roster has been there many, many times before. Right. So hey, I respect if you'll take the Grizzlies because that's hard to do. Taking the young team like the Suns last year, it was hard. It's hard to be I'll take the young team that's inexperienced. I'll take the young team that's on a roll over the team that's experienced, got maybe the more established stars. So it's just it's hard to take that young team. So if you're taking the first round over a team like the Clippers, then I mean I respect it, but you understand the predicament that I was in last year, and a lot of people were in last year when they were underrating the Suns. Even after the first series against the Lakers, they're like, man, they're going up against the MVP. Can they beat Jokic? Can Ayton contain them? Can they score at the same clip? Can they play as well as they did against the old hurt Lakers team? So it's just hard for people across the country and the media and whatnot to be to get on the young team's bandwagon because it's just default to go with that more experienced playoff team that you've seen so many times before. So yeah, it's a really interesting predicament. So we'll see what Memphis does. I would take them over anyone except for Phoenix and Golden State. I mean, I would take Golden State or Phoenix over them, but I'd probably take them over anyone else. The Clippers is going to be so hard. That's so hard. I don't know.
So what would you take, Ryan?
Clippers or Grizzlies? I mean, look, I said I would take the Suns and Golden State. I can't go against it's so hard. I can't go against the Clippers. I'd go Clippers in 7. It would go the distance. The series would go the distance. And I would go Clippers. I
That's
would.
fair. I'm gonna stick to what I did last year. Last year I
Yeah.
took the Suns in 7 to beat the Lakers, and this year I'm gonna take the Grizzlies in 7 to beat the Clippers, if that's the case. And if it's
You know what's
Minnesota,
funny is
give me Memphis in 5.
I disagree with both of you. I think the Grizzlies will close them out in 6, and I think if it goes to a 7th game, I think it's the Clippers. I think
Yeah, I
Memphis
mean, that's
is-
why I have the Clippers
Memphis,
in
I think a nightmare scenario for Memphis is a 7th game against the Clippers in the first round of the playoffs. But then playoff P might come back
For the record,
and shoot it off the side of the backboard like he did in the bubble. But
for the record, Norman Powell is expected to be back at some point. Like I know he's resuming basketball activities as of now. Like he's ramping back up. So like
that's good.
the guy should be
Resuming
back.
basketball
Well,
activity.
I'm just saying the guy should be back for the series. Like that's a week.
I don't know what that means.
I mean, that's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks away. Like the guys.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
I mean, if you're scrimmaging now, like.
All right. Well,
play in 2
I know
weeks.
we've talked about Memphis a lot, and we get to talk about a joyous subject to close out our NBA discussion: the Los Angeles Lakers.
Lord.
This
Coronation.
might be my favorite discussion that we've ever talked about on the podcast.
Really?
And let me tell you why. Firstly, this is a big night for Phoenix Suns fans for multiple reasons. Looking at the current scores right now, the Spurs are up by 13 on the road at Denver with 4 minutes to play.
Wow,
now, why is
15
this
now.
important? Why is this important, you may ask? The Spurs are the 10 seed in the West, which would be the last spot in that play-in game. The 11 seed is where the team that everyone picked to win the West this year, the retirement home LA Lakers, with La Disney and A Day-to-Day, sit at 11 right there. I love that nickname.
That's so
funny on the podcast. But basically tonight, with the Spurs win, assuming they win, the Suns and the Lakers play tonight. Firstly, if the Suns win tonight, they would set their record for a single season wins total with their 63rd win tonight. That'd be the most in franchise history. That would be exciting. And second, and probably even more exciting, if they can beat this LA Lakers squad at home, not only do they do that, but they kick their arch rival out of the playoffs and send them to Cancun for the summer. And that would be, wow, that would just be incredible joy as a Suns fan, not only to set the franchise record for wins, but also send your rival, who everyone thought was going to be great this year, packing. So currently it's about a 4-point game at the end of the first. The Lakers are up, but don't worry, right after this podcast, I'm going to be flipping right to that game. So I'm excited for that. But your thoughts on the LA Lakers and what a disappointment that they've been this season. Talk about funerals.
Do you mind if I go
What's
ahead?
going to happen tonight?
Oh yeah, you know what? Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. Do you mind if I go ahead? I'm sorry. I don't want to. I don't want to steal your thunder, but look, here's the thing.
No, go ahead.
Trevor and I remember talking about this before the year started, Jack, and Trevor and I were talking about the Russell Westbrook acquisition, and you know what I said? I said this is going to be a disaster, and
that's what I said too.
I mean, I think I was exactly right. I think all of us were exactly right in thinking the same thing. I mean, it's been an absolute disaster. I mean, you don't need to say anything else about it. Look, I get he's been getting a lot of hate, and all of it's probably not deserved, right? The guy's still a solid player, but the reality is he's a horrible fit with LeBron James. And, you know, Anthony Davis is made of glass. You know, you probably have to trade the guy. I mean, look, here's the thing. I would trade the guy for a different superstar. He can't stay healthy. And when your team winning a championship or making the playoffs relies on your second star staying healthy, and he can't, you cannot rely on him. You can't keep him on that roster with LeBron James, in my opinion. You need to look to trade Anthony Davis for a guy who will stay healthy, or at least more likely to stay healthy, right? But look, Westbrook, no spacing. He can't shoot mid-range jump shots anymore, much less 3-pointers. I mean, he doesn't have the same hops he did. He doesn't have the same physical explosiveness. If you watch him go for dunks, the guy barely clears the rim on most of his dunks. I mean, look, I'm just saying he's getting up there in age. You can see it on the court clearly. That coupled with the lack of spacing and the lack of defense, it was just a disaster brewing from the start. So, you know, I've said to Trevor and Jack before, I almost feel bad for LeBron, but then I remember he's the one who built this team, and I don't feel bad anymore. I mean, the guy brought on his own destruction. I mean, he's been playing amazing when he's playing in games, but he's the one who brought Westbrook in. Like, he was going to get DeMar DeRozan. They were having conversations about getting DeMar DeRozan And LeBron started talking to Westbrook, and they got Westbrook instead. I mean, what an absolute disaster. So, I will say it's fun as a Cavs fan watching my team do better than the LeBron LA Lakers. The guy goes to LA for the stardom, and now we're an up and ascending team without him. I love to see it. I love to see LeBron failing outside of Cleveland. No, I know he got us a title, whatever. It's still, it's nice to see. And it's fun to watch the delusional Lakers fans get mad because they said, I had a Lakers buddy who said they would win 3 championships in a row starting this year. So, looks like they're not even going to get the chance to win the first one. So, I love to see this. I'm shocked the Spurs made it in, especially because Dejounte Murray's not even playing right now. I mean, the guy lost 7-8 pounds the last couple of weeks because of an illness. So, respect to them for getting through without their all-star and making the play in here. I mean, they traded Derek White. It looked like they were selling at the deadline, and look at them making the play. And so good for them. The Lakers, we all saw this was a disaster, except for Lakers fans, and it turned out how I expected. I don't know, Trevor, what do you want to add on here?
You guys covered it well. I'll just add this. It's always fun watching the Lakers lose. I love chirping Lakers fans. I love calling out their delusion. Yep. And hopefully the Suns can put the nail in their coffin tonight and win this basketball game and officially end their season. It won't be easy. I think the Lakers are going to give us a good run tonight. But I do expect my Suns to prevail. With that being said, fellas, I think we will conclude our NBA discussion for this podcast. And we do want to talk about one last thing briefly.
We do.
It is officially Masters Week, the best week of the year on the PGA Tour calendar. All 3 of us are pretty, I wouldn't say avid golfers, but all 3 of us are pretty big golfers.
Yeah.
We all play with each other whenever we can. We all go to different schools, so it gets a little tough, but we all like golf. We all follow golf. The big news is Tiger Woods is expected to play the Masters, his first round tee time, 10:34 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday. So fellas, give me a breakdown. Who do you think is going to win the tournament? How well do we think Tiger will do? Who wants to take it away? I actually got a lot of interesting things about determining a winner.
I want to hear what you have to say first, Trevor.
Yeah, Trevor.
Give me some criteria to help give me another answer.
If you're looking to bet on a winner this week in the Masters, no amateur has ever won. The oldest winner is 46 years old, Jack Nicklaus. There has not been a first-time winner since 1979. All right, so that kind of eliminates a few people, but not very many. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The last 10 winners of the Masters were ranked in the top 25 of the official World Golf Rankings. 10 of the last 11 winners of the Masters made the cut the previous year. 9 of the last 10 winners had a top 10 at a major the previous 2 years. And 12 of the last 13 winners were in the top 50 in driving distance the year they won. One other thing, people who dominate the par 5s also tend to do very well at the Masters. I think par 5 scoring is very important, considering they're all gettable there's 4 par 5s, they're all gettable, they're all birdieable. 13 and 15 are actually eagleable if you can hit a good second shot. So with that being said, fellas, I'll tell you who I think is going to win the Masters this year. Tiger Woods. No, my pick is going to be my pick's actually going to be Patrick Cantlay. I actually think he is a very interesting kind of under the radar guy. I like his betting odds at plus 1,800. He is an excellent par 5 scorer. He's also very good at avoiding bogeys, and I think he's had a good run of form in majors the last couple of years, and I think he's due for a breakthrough, and he is my pick to win the Masters this year.
Wow. Ian, you want to go or you want me to go ahead?
You go ahead.
Okay,
I'll
look,
mine for that.
I will say, look, I want to say one thing before I get into who I think would win. I just want to say, we're all big, at least I know Trevor and I are big Tiger Woods fans. So I'm just happy that he's playing in this tournament. He's not going to win. He might not even make the cut, but it's just going to be fun watching him. And I know a lot more people are going to watch the Masters because of him. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the picture, but I posted it on Twitter of the people following Tiger Woods' practice round earlier this week. And I mean, just the people following his practice round. I mean, it was a massive crowd, and it's just so great to watch him go back and play. After the car wreck he had a while back, it's just great to see him back, and great to see all the people who love watching him back, right? Because he still provides electricity like no one else. So it's just good to see him back. It's good to see that more people watch because of him, and yeah, I'm excited to watch him play again. So that'll be a lot of fun. Look. I don't want to sound like I'm just picking a favorite here, but like for me, I kind of want to go with Justin Thomas to win it all. Look, I'm honestly going off of Trevor's, advice here. Good good par 5 scorer, a top player in the world golf ranking. And Justin Thomas is both of those things. I mean, Justin Thomas, I believe right now is 7th in the world golf ranking. And he's tied for 3rd in par 5 scoring on the year. I mean, the guy fits both of the criteria, and he's an experienced player. I mean, he's won before. He's won in big moments before. The guy's a great player. He bombs the ball. I love Justin Thomas. Maybe because, I always told Trevor that someone told me I play like Justin Thomas. So that was fun. But look, I
don't know what they were seeing, but they saw something.
That's what
was this from the front tees at DC?
This was a couple of years ago. Look, they weren't great. But anyway, look, I think that Justin Thomas is a good pick here. I think that, I think he's a great golfer. I also would go John Rahm, but that's also too easy. The guy's the betting favorite, so I didn't want to pick John Rahm, but John Rahm's really an easy pick. And I like John Rahm. I like watching him. He, out of all the guys that I've watched, I feel like he provides more electricity than most other golfers. If I had to choose someone other than Tiger, of course. I think Rahm adds a little bit of excitement that I have.
I will say, Ryan, based on all the criteria I just said, the 4 golfers that have basically the trends with them to win the Masters are Cameron Smith, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, and Paul Casey. And I really like Xander Schauffele and Paul Casey. If I were a betting man, I would bet on both of them to be in the top 10. I think you'd get plus odds for that.
Schauffele,
I think you could make some money.
I agree with that, actually. I like Schauffele. Eden?
I was just going to ask you, Trevor, which golfers fit that criteria. And I love that you said my guy. Cameron Smith is my guy to win the Masters.
Oh my God.
He's hot right now.
He's been really hot recently.
Sounded a little weird, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But he won a tournament recently, I believe.
He did. It was a fairly big tournament too, I think.
Was it the Players? Did he win the Players?
I can't remember if it was the Players.
It was something big, but anyways, he's been on fire as of late. He fits all those rankings, and I just think, this guy's poised to make a run. He can drive the ball. He's, I think, towards the top in strokes gained, and I think the biggest thing is he's great on the greens. And what is that shots saved or something like that, something around the greens, whatever that stat is, he's 1 or 2 in that stat right now. So I'm excited for him. I think he's someone who will make some noise this year. And I mean, not a ton of research that I did, but kind of someone that I didn't necessarily think would be kind of up there in that upper echelon, but I like him at around 15 or 16 to 1, and I'm thinking about putting a few bucks on him to win the Masters.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't know, unless either of you have anything else to add, anything else about the Masters, I'm all good. Or if you have any shout outs just unrelated to the Masters, go right ahead. Trevor, do you have anything else you want to say? I know normally you have a shout out for us.
It was Cameron Smith who won the Players this year. Jack, you are correct on that point. I actually don't have any. I didn't come prepared with a shout out this week.
Unbelievable.
Sorry about that.
I got one. Shout out.
I don't have a shout out.
Shout out to our boy Colin Coward. Got mentioned by 2 guys on the podcast today.
Oh my God.
That's big. Also, the Suns currently sit about 3 back of the Lakers right now, middle of the second quarter. And I believe the Spurs game just went final. They won by 19 points without DeJounte Murray tonight.
Wow.
At Denver with Jokic going for 41 and 17, and they won by 20. So
what else can the guy do? I mean, imagine that team without Jokic. Just imagine. I mean,
which I think is interesting. You go for 41 and 17 and you lose by 20, and this guy's the favorite for MVP. Anyways, that's a discussion for a different day. But shout out to the Spurs, and now their magic number is 1 for the play-in game. And if the Lakers lose, there you go.
I want to shout out the Utah Jazz for being the biggest joke of an NBA franchise in the association. Blowing another 25-point lead to the Clippers. They blew a big lead tonight to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yes, I was going to say.
They blew another big lead a couple nights ago, but I forgot who they played. So shout out to Utah for being a joke and something for me to laugh at in my pastime.
It was the Warriors, Trevor.
It was the Warriors, right? I think the Warriors ended that game on an 18-0 run or something. So shout out Utah for being a laughingstock of the NBA. Donovan Mitchell, you deserve better. Come to Phoenix. We'll gladly help you out.
Come to Cleveland. We have the roster. Oh my gosh.
You guys. He'll win a few games in Phoenix, I think, for sure. But with that being said, I'm good. I got nothing else.
Oh, I do want to say one thing, actually. This isn't a shout out, but this is just related to Donovan Mitchell. It's not working. He's going to leave. I think the perfect stat here is he only passes to Rudy Gobert twice a game. Not assists. That's not assists. That's passes. Twice a game. He averages you saw that? 2 passes a game to Rudy Gobert. I mean, how do you do that? You're the best 2 players on the team, and you're passing to your star big men 2 times the entire game on average. It's just not working. So that stat of it in and of itself just told me that it's just not working. So yeah, shout out to the Jazz for just, an upcoming implosion here. I mean, we all know it's coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. So yeah, I don't know, Jack, do you have anything? I don't know if you have anything else to add. Trevor, nothing else? Oh boy, look at that. Yeah,
Salsa J, baby. He didn't hit my first bucket.
I knew someone would have to bring up Jay Crowder on this podcast. I'm glad it wasn't Trevor this week, honestly. But look, I hope everyone enjoyed. Yeah, it was a good podcast, and we'll be back next week with more NBA, NFL, NBA playoff preview, Masters review, some NFL, some signings. I know the Rams got even better this past week, so we'll talk about that. And yeah, we'll be back next week. So hope you enjoyed.
Looking forward.